Good morning. We survived Wednesday, which was our halfway point. So now it's all downhill from here, right? Okay, so we're going to continue in the book of James. We're on the last chapter, chapter 5. And this has some pretty good stuff that we need to really think about. So let me start. I'm trying not to drop my handy dandy notes, but I had to relocate the whole filming thing because of the dogs. So I'm going to be dropping a few things, in other words. Sorry about that. Okay, chapter 5, we're just going to go verses 1 through 5, which is the first little section here, where he's talking about, it's a warning to the rich. Now, I don't want to lose you here. I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, you know what? I can just skip right on over this because I am not rich and I don't have to worry about it. If that were the case, well, I could stop reading right here also. But this is not just talking about monetary. There are so many different ways to be rich. So bear with me and let's get through this. Look here, you rich people. Weep and groan with anguish because all of the terrible troubles ahead of you. So he's warning them. You got bad times are coming, buddy. Your wealth is rotting away and your fine clothes are moth-eaten rags. Your gold and silver are corroded. Now, I know you're going to want to stop right here and say, well, gold and silver doesn't corrode, but this is all symbolic. So just, again, hang in there. We're going to get to it. The very wealth you were counting on will eat away your flesh like fire. This corroded treasure you have hoarded will testify against you on the day of judgment. For listen, hear the cries of the field workers whom you have cheated of their pay. The cries of those who harvest your fields have reached the ears of the Lord of heaven's armies. You have spent your years on earth in luxury, satisfying your every desire. You have fattened yourselves for the day of slaughter. You have condemned and killed innocent people who do not resist you. Whoa! I mean, he is absolutely letting them have it. This is some really tough stuff he's talking about here. So we're going to break it down and look at it. What he's teaching about is greedy people. And so what I want you to understand before you close your mind, understand that there is a difference in wealth and greed. James is not teaching that, hey, you can't have money. He's teaching you not to be greedy, and it's about how you obtain that money and where that money falls in place with your walk with God. These people he's talking to, they're trusting in the wealth they've obtained, and they've obtained their riches at the expense of others. When he's talking about how he's killed people, what he's referring to are these men in the fields. They depend on every penny that they get. You know, they're like me. Every penny counts. And so if someone is cheating them of their wages, he's killing them. Back then, I mean, that was it. There was no welfare department. There was no Medicaid. There was no food stamps. You didn't get your wage. You didn't have food. You literally could potentially starve to death in this day and age. And that's what he's talking about. You're cheating them. You've obtained your wealth, but how did you get it? You got it from cheating people. So there are 3 different aspects of greed that I pulled out of here that we're going to talk about. Number 1, James says that greed leads to misery. Well, you know, again, you may say, no, I'm looking at all these rich people and they're just happy as they can be. All right. Click on the word leads. It leads to misery. He's not saying that it's visible right this moment. He said it leads to misery. And why? Think how the rich struggle to maintain their riches. And in order to maintain those riches, if they've obtained it with greed and dishonesty, think how much they've got to keep going and how much dishonesty they've got to keep going. And again, Not talking to everyone. And when you think about riches, think about something besides money. There are a lot of ways to be rich. Think of it in terms of a job. There's a job you really, really want, and you got to step on some toes to get it. Maybe lie a little bit, maybe fudge a little bit on your resume. All right. So let's say you get the job. They don't figure it out and you get the job. Now, what have you got to do to maintain it? If you were not qualified for this job, if you obtained it by cheating the system or cheating the people in charge, then now you've got to struggle to maintain it. The stress and the worry of being found out, of trying to force yourself to keep a job that you were never qualified for to begin with. Look at it that way. And what misery that brings on you. Is it worth it? Your health will start failing. The stress will eat away at you. And those are the type things he's talking about. When he says your silver and your gold is corroding, he's talking about your wealth is slowly killing you. Obviously, silver and gold don't actually corrode, but he said your clothes are moth-eaten. The point he's making is that riches fade. Riches go away. You get them, they go. The second thing he's talking about is that greed is seen by God. So you can't secretly be greedy. God is omnipotent and omnipresent. He sees everything. He knows what is going on. You can't hide it from God. So that's the second thing. The third thing, greed is self-deceiving. You might say, well, I know what I'm doing, but do you? Do you really know what you're doing? He's talking about how the greedy are fattening their hearts. This is symbolic of fattening up a calf to be slaughtered. He talks about this, that it's the same thing. Well, you're fattening your heart to be judged on the day of judgment. Before you take a calf to slaughter, you fatten it up so you get the most out of it. Well, he's saying right here, that's what the riches are doing to your heart. They're fattening your heart. So on the day of judgment, you are going to be judged more harshly. There's a lot of symbolism. James is just so full of it. And full of it, I don't mean, I really worded that poorly. Full of the wisdom that comes with all this symbolism. That's what I meant. I'm glad the weekend's coming up. I'm exhausted. So, you might ask, well, how do I know? How do I know the difference? Well, the main way to fight greed and not let greed take over and be the driving force for your life is generosity. And that is spoken of throughout the Bible, Old Testament and New Testament. Generosity is the key to fighting greed. So don't worry. God didn't say you can't have money and you can't be rich. He said don't be greedy. Don't step on someone else to get there. Don't worship your money instead of Him. It's a lot to think about. I mean, personally, I don't have to worry about the money thing, but as I pointed out a while ago, there are other ways to have riches. Riches come in many forms. It doesn't have to be a monetary richness at all. Think about the things in your life that make sure there's nothing that's coming between you and your relationship with God. Make sure there's no area where you're greedy. It's a lot to think about, and I'm absorbing it all as I go. As I'm studying James, I'm just really absorbing what he's teaching us. And here we're, like I said, he's talking to the church. Now this part of James, theologists, argue about whether he was talking to the church or talking about the non-Christians, but it doesn't even matter because the message is still the same. Check that greed, folks, and I'll see you tomorrow.